All right. How many were here 2 weeks ago when we had the cosmological arguments? Do you still have your papers from that week? We didn't finish it. If you need a piece of paper, a flyer, or notes from 2 weeks ago, raise your hands, and I will send some along to give you one. It's just going to be the last page of this, but you'll have some good notes. I need someone to pass them out on this side over here. Everybody willing? Thank you. Raise your hands if you need some notes. We're going to finish off last week. The title of last week's, 2 weeks ago's message was, Come and Let Us Reason Together, Exercise Your Mind, Part 1. Exercise Your Mind, Part 1. Come, let us reason together. And I want to read our foundational scripture for our teaching. And Cindy, or Bruce, if you put it up on the overhead, it's 1 Peter 3:15. Thank you, brother. 1 Peter 3:15. If you have your Bibles, turn to 1 Peter 3:15. I believe that God wants us to know what we believe and why we believe it. Right? A lot of Christians just say, hey, I'll take it by faith. That's enough for me. And that's okay for you. But it's not enough for me. Right? I wanted to know what I believed and why, because I wanted to be able to explain it to people when they asked me. Because when I got born again, I was in Tokyo, Japan, gave my heart to the Lord, went back to Misawa Air Force Base, and my friend said to me, what happened? I said, I got born again. He goes, what does that mean? I said, I don't know. I said, I don't know what happened, but I got born again. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't tell him about God or why I believed in God or anything. He was just a total atheist. And so I want us to study some of the great arguments for the existence of God. Right? That's what we talked about last week. We talked about the cosmological view, the teleological, the moral argument, and we're going to deal with relativism in a minute here. But I want us to read the scripture. It says, but in your hearts set apart Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope you have. And that also do this with gentleness and respect. So always be prepared, everybody. Always be prepared. Why are you against abortion? I don't know. I'm just against abortion. No. It's not, no. You need to have at least 3 good reasons to give them that are logical and reasonable, okay? We're not dumb, right? Don't check your brains at the door when you become a Christian. Put that scripture verse up there. I want to look at it again. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you the reason. Everybody say reason. There are reasons why we believe, and we talked about it. The cosmological view, there was what started the great world that we live in, the universe. There was an initial cause, something that caused everything to start. And that cause is not a part of the stuff. It had to be outside, something transcendent that started the cause. It's like in a bowling alley, something's got to pick the ball up and throw it, okay? Then it hits the pins and they scatter. But something had to be as Aristotle said, the prime mover. Yep. Aristotle, he said, there was a prime mover, something that started the movement. It was God, okay? And then we talked about this phrase, nothing comes from nothing. Nothing comes from nothing. Think about it. Something cannot come from nothing. So something had to create, something had to make all that we see in this beautiful world we live in. The teleological view is the argument from design. There's incredible design. I'm just going to go over these real briefly. This is just a review of last week. If you're walking on the beach and you see a watch on the beach, what do you think? Oh, look what the waves made, a watch. No, you look at it, you see all the little intricate moving parts, you say, man, this was made by a really smart, incredible designer, and it's for a purpose, to tell time to somebody else, right? So somebody made it for a purpose. It has purpose and design in it. And we talked about the DNA, our DNA inside of every one of our cells are incredible design elements that have actual information in them. Information that tells you what color hair you're gonna have, if you're gonna be tall or short, or it'll tell you how many times you're gonna sneeze. You believe that? My son told me that the other day. He learned it in college. He said, "Dad, the number of times you sneeze is inherited from your parents." I'm like, I don't know about that. But there's incredible information in your DNA. It's like a blueprint for a house, but it's for a person, okay? So the DNA keeps everything running smoothly, okay? So information informs a informer. If there's information, there has to be someone to give that information to us, some intelligent being. And our intellectuals in this universities of today are grasping at straws to explain these concepts. If there's information, well, maybe it's aliens, they say. The smartest PhDs in our universities have come to the conclusion that it couldn't be God, it must be aliens. Okay, that seeded life on our planet. Okay, it's gotten totally ridiculous. And then we talked about the moral argument. Okay, we talked about morals. There had to be somebody who gave us morals. If we're just animals, animals don't have morals. Okay, we're humans. It's totally different than an animal. Something gave us morals, right? Like torturing babies for fun is wrong. Whether you're in China, whether you're in America, wherever, that's a moral statement. It's for all time, for all people, okay? And we believe our morals come from a transcendent personal being, okay? You should love your wife as yourself, Jesus said. That's a beautiful moral thing. So, come transparent, transcendent personal being. Transcendent means he's not a part of creation. He's totally other. He created everything. Okay, now we're going to look at the last page, relativism. They believe that there's no universal moral truths whatsoever. And there's three forms of moral relativism. So there's cultural relativism, conventional relativism, and ethical relativism. We're going to fill in the blanks. Do you have a pen? Should be pens in front of you. Cultural relativism is based on the observation that different cultures seem to have different values. Write the word in there, different values. And since they all have different value systems, there must be no right system, no objective morality. Everything's relative. Every country has different morals, so there must not be any morals. There's no right way to do anything. And so I can use a golfing illustration. If Johnny and I went golfing, which we do, and we come up with two different scores, which happens, like the other day I added up two scores and they were both wrong. Your husband caught me on two. I was trying this new math, and so it didn't work. So, if you have two different scores, you could both be wrong, right? So if different countries have different moral values, we could all be wrong. Or what's the other logical choice? One could be right? So just because everybody has different values doesn't mean nobody has the right values. Doesn't mean there aren't right values. And so we have right values, amen?
Yeah.
Not our country. I think we have great values except for abortion. Okay? And homosexuality and a few other things, okay? So morals are not descriptions of the way things are. Morals are the prescription of the things the way they ought to be. So just because countries haven't messed up like we do, okay, doesn't mean there's no moral standards. There are standards. We just might have them messed up, and morals are the way things should be. So let's look at the next paragraph. The view that each society decides what is right and wrong is called conventionalism. Conventionalism. In contrast to cultural relativism, which says that there is no right or wrong answers, conventionalism claims there is a right and a wrong, but it varies from society to society. The majority rules and morality become simply what is legal. Okay, so If it's legal, it's okay. So in our country, abortion is legal, so it must be right in God's eyes. That's what they would say, conventional relativists say. But what about Germany in the 30s and 40s? They were killing Jews, they were killing homosexuals, they were killing handicapped people, they were killing foreigners, they were killing communists, they were killing everybody in their society that was not a part of the majority. It was legal to kill in their country. Okay, so if conventionalism is true, then the Hebrew prophets, Gandhi, Jesus, Gautama Buddha, William Wilberforce, do you know who that is? Wilberforce got slavery outlawed in England. Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln, and Martin Luther King Jr. would be among the most egregious criminals who ever lived, because they went against the laws of the land. Just because something is legal doesn't make it moral. But these relativists, conventionalism, they believe it does, because the society tells you what is right and wrong. But where does right and wrong come from? From God's Word that never changes. And I'm glad it doesn't, because lying is wrong. 2,000 years ago, lying is still wrong today. Dishonoring your parents was wrong then, is still wrong today. Killing was wrong then, is still wrong today. Morals need to be like a rock. Our Constitution of the United States needs to be like a rock, unchangeable, so you can base your life upon it. And that's what our morals are. Okay, look at C. By far the most widespread form of relativism is ethical subjectivism. Ethical subjectivism. Subjective. That means it's up to your interpretation. And so, in this view, individuals decide what is right and wrong. Okay, is this America right here? This is what they teach in our colleges today. So don't go to college, I'll save you a lot of money. Because this is what you'll come out believing in right here. Subjective, ethical relativism. Morality becomes fluid and privatized, changing to fit circumstances and conforming to convenience, right? So we can kill our baby in our womb if it will inconvenience us. Well, I don't know one baby that never inconvenienced you. They're just one big inconvenience, but a blessed one, amen? Yeah. Okay, so they say this a lot. What's true for you is true for you, and what's true for me is true for me. That might be your truth, but it's not my truth, okay? So all truth is relative. You just pick your own truth. That's good for you, okay? Who are you to judge? Who are you to tell me what's right and wrong? If everything is subjective, right? Don't tell me what's right and wrong. I'm going to make up my own right and wrong. It's up to me. Don't judge me. There was a professor who was trying to discuss this, the bad part of this, why this is a bad belief system. He was discussing it with a kid in his dorm room. The kid wasn't getting it. He said, don't tell me what's right and wrong to the professor. And the professor just had it. He couldn't explain it to this kid. So the professor thought, oh, so he grabbed the boy's stereo and walked out of the dorm room. And the boy said, what? Don't take my stereo. That's wrong. The professor said, no, I need a stereo. You got one I need, one I'm taking it. It's right for me. You see how they can't live out their philosophy? It'll come around to bite them. What would a relativist say about the actions of ISIS? Oh, they're just freedom fighters. You can justify anything, really. ISIS, oh, they're just fighting for what they believe in, right? Or are they terrorists? How would a relativist justify the actions of NAMBLA? NAMBLA is an acronym for North American Man-Boy Love Association. I'm sorry to even say that, right? If everything's subjective, right, then they can justify anything, can't they? And they are, right? We've just changed the definition of marriage. Now we're headed, right to this NAMBLA group, and they're going to be mainstream before you know it, legal before you know it, because this is our world. subjective, ethical, subjectivism, relativism. Question to ask, is it wrong to torture babies for fun? Is your answer true everywhere at all times? Islam, when you look at the Muslim religion, okay, they believe in FGM, female genital mutilation, without anesthesia, by the tens of thousands. And it's okay. It's okay. Don't tell us how we should practice our religion. Is something wrong? It's wrong. It's wrong. It should make us angry. Stoning women for being raped. They do that religion because she has brought a disgrace on her family. She has dishonored her family. And they will stone her. Sounds wrong to me. Killing girls for being westernized, called honor killings. They're doing it in America. The Muslims are killing their own daughters. One father was upset at his two daughters for becoming westernized. He ran them over with a car and killed them. Skipped town. Now he's over in the Middle East. We can't find him. It's happening all the time. A Muslim man up in New York started a TV station. He had a TV station that promoted Islam in America. He got angry at his wife because she wanted the divorce. He cut her head off. And then he turned himself in. It's okay in his culture. But I'm here to tell you, man, and I have like a whole list of these things with Islam. It's just sick. Some things are just wrong. I don't care. You can't justify some things with religion. It is just wrong. So there's some major problems with relativism. Let me just open it up for questions. Have you seen relativism around with the people you work with? Or yes, Charlie?
I have a question about what you just said about the Muslim that cut his wife's head off.
Yep.
If he thought it was okay, why did he turn himself in?
Right.
He knew it was wrong.
Yeah. So we live in a relativistic society. They've been teaching this relativism, moral relativism in our schools for years. They taught it when I was in school. Now we have generations that are grown up and they believe in this stuff. Stealing's okay. You know, if you really need it, it's okay to steal. Tell us.
That happened with Holly in her class this semester. At school, they did some sort of like moral question that they did, and so they gave this long story about somebody it was supposed to be set in another country or somewhere, and the person was sick. I can't remember if it was his wife or his mother was dying, and the medicine was too expensive to purchase, and so they stole the medicine. The person stole the medicine, so you had to decide if that was right or wrong. And so, you know, Holly said it was wrong, and they charted their morality based on that, and Holly got a 5, but the most moral, they said, answer was a 6, which was that they would steal to save the person's life. And that bothered Holly, you know, and she didn't get a chance to explain that I'm not just a rules follower. I believe that God said not to do it, so I don't, you know, I'm obeying God. And also, if I obey God, I believe and trust Him that He would provide the medicine I needed or the healing I needed if I obeyed Him and didn't steal the medicine. But she didn't get a chance to explain, and she was not the most, not stealing was not the best answer. And that just happened this semester at school.
Yeah, so where do we get our morals from? Morals are rights and wrongs, way to act, right? One time this Brinks truck fell off the interstate when we lived in South Florida in Miami, and money went everywhere. Well, the whole community came out and just started taking the money, except one little boy. He came and he collected it all, and he gave it to the Brinks truck driver or the police. When they showed up, he said, I collected all this, I'm giving it to you. And he made the newspapers, and they asked him, and the reporter asked him, how come you didn't steal the money like everybody else? He said, well, they taught us in Sunday school that stealing is wrong.
Amen.
He could have justified his stealing by saying he was poor. I'm poor, my mom needs a car, I blah, 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 but God says, thou shalt not steal, so I'm not going to steal. So we get our morals from God. They're eternal morals. They don't change. Isn't that amazing? You know, back in the 40s, 30s, 50s, we were a lot poorer, but we were a lot more moral. There was a lot less crime when we were poor. Now we have more money, and we have more stealing, and we have more whatever, more crime. Isn't that interesting? It's not about having a lack of money or a lack of education. It's about morals. We believe in God gave us morals and we're supposed to obey them. So let me have some ushers. I got a new handout for tonight. I have an usher on this side. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Now we're going to talk about, okay, so people are going to come to you and ask you why you believe in God. What are you going to say? Bam. You got 3, 4 good arguments, 3 good arguments right there. Cosmological, teleological, and the moral arguments. Don't say, well, I believe in the teleological argument, and just say, hey, I believe that God created such incredible design in the world. There's no way this world with incredible design and purpose can be just by accident. When something explodes, it doesn't create anything. It scatters things. Things fly out of control. They don't come together like the universe comes together and planets revolve around, and stars revolve. That's organization, okay? Explosions don't cause incredible organization. Especially if you just think about our Earth and our sun. If the sun was 1 inch closer to the Earth, we would burn up. If it was 1 inch farther away, we would freeze. That's how delicately balanced our system is. And so that doesn't happen by the Big Bang Theory. That happens by a very intelligent creator who says, you know what, I'm going to make no room for error. And so we're going to talk, so you got this stuff, okay, and then we're going to look at it, because people are going to ask you, well, how do I know the Bible is trustworthy and authentic? How can we know and believe in the Bible? Have you ever been asked that question? Can I tell you something? That is a good, reasonable question. Don't think that people are bad people just because they ask you that question. It's just normal. God gave us inquiring minds, and inquiring minds want to know. So, right, when they ask you, well, how should we know if the Bible's authentic? You need to have at least 3 bam answers. Bam, bam, bam. Okay? And I've got them here. I got 10 of them for you. Just in case you can't remember 10. They're towards the back. But I just want to share with you 1 Peter 3:15. Put that up there again. But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. Are you hearing me? It's going to take study on your part. It's going to take memorization a little bit on your part. You can practice on your husband. You can practice on your kids, your wife. But you need to have these answers ready on your tongue. So the New Testament's claims are far-reaching both in depth and scope. But are they true? How do we begin to assess their truth? Who wrote these books? Are the authors trustworthy? Are these accounts historically accurate? When were they written? How were they chosen to be included in the New Testament? And who chose them? These are all really good questions. And what about the books that were rejected for inclusion? That's another great question. And this is from a book, and you need to write this down or take this with you and buy this book. I'm telling you, I downloaded it on ebooks. I've never downloaded a book in my life until like less than a year ago. Now I have like 8 books I downloaded, and this is one of them. And it's fantastic. It goes into, you're going to have a lot of questions for people. This is your book. If you want theological questions, if you want philosophical questions, if you have religious questions, they're in this book, okay? And so it's called Holman's Quick Source Guide to Christian Apologetics. Remember we talked about what apologetics means, the defense of our faith. The church did not determine the canon, it recognized the canon. Remember, Constantine supposedly put the canon together, okay? The scriptures, he got all the books of the Bible, put them together, okay? But this contradicts that. The statement is, the church did not determine the canon, it recognized the canon. The canon of scriptures, that means all the books of the Bible were already there, they were already put together when the church finally came in and said, okay, those 27 books, that's the New Testament. Those are the only ones that make sense. They're the only ones who work together. And those are the only ones the churches are actually reading and is changing people's lives. We're going to get into it, why they chose them. So the church just didn't come along and say, look, hey, here's one and here's one. And no, they're already there. They're already together. Literally, the books were already together. We're going to talk about that. So the Council of Carthage in 393 and Hippo, Hippo, in 397, fixed the list of New Testament books into its final form, but these books were not arbitrarily selected. They each had to meet certain criteria. For a book to get in the Bible had to meet certain criteria. You need to underline these. Number one, they had to have apostolic origin. Apostolic, apostles. The 12 apostles had to write them. So to be in the Bible had to be written by an apostle. Meaning each book had to have been written by an apostle or by an associate who preserved an apostle's teaching. The only exceptions were granted to James and Jude. Write that, James and Jude. Why? Jesus' brothers, who became his followers after his death. This requirement also means the books had to have been written during the apostolic age, the time when the apostles were still alive, ending with John's death probably in the late 90s. They had to have been generally accepted by the church. Okay, so they had to be accepted by the church. And in continuous use, it's going to be hard to fit that one in there. Continuous use. Okay, so the books had to be written by an apostle, accepted by the church, and had to be in continuous use in the churches. In worship services. The teaching of the books had to cohere and agree with accepted and undisputed Scripture. Cohere and agree with accepted, undisputed Scripture. This is really important. Okay, for the books to be included in the Bible, they had to agree with all the other books. They can't contradict each other. Peter can't contradict Paul. Paul can't contradict Matthew. Okay, they have to be in harmony. Okay, because they lived it. They were with Jesus. If one said Jesus liked soccer, the other said no, he didn't like soccer. He never played soccer. Okay, that's a contradiction. So they had to agree with each other. Coherence. Lastly, the books must be inspired by God. Fill in those blanks. Can someone turn the air on? I'm like, okay. They have to be inspired by God. As such, they must display a self-evidencing quality and the power to transform lives. That's really important. That was one of the keys to accepting a book as canon of Scripture. Okay, we're not talking about the Old Testament. We're talking about the New Testament. It had to have changed lives. Had to be written by an apostle. Had to be circulating amongst all the churches, right? And has to agree with all the other books. And it has to change lives. That's God's stamp mark of approval when words change people's lives. When marriages are saved by the power of God's Word. Because there's a lot of books out there that are good books, okay? Okay, let me read you something here. This is written by a book publisher. Listen to this. One of the grim facts about the book business is that for the average book, 48% of what it will sell over its lifetime will happen in the first 90 days after its release. So you got 3 months, 90 days, right? So 48% of its sales are going to happen in 3 months. In other words, the critical work of the publisher and the book's author is putting lots of capital and sweat equity into the book's launch. those first 3 months. Rarely will a book that crawled into the marketplace be swept up in an avalanche of sales in the weeks and months that follow. It either spikes up there or it slowly fizzles. Though this may sound a little obvious, one of the facts of the business is that when a book does catch fire and sell well, it happens because people are talking about it. In the business, we say the book is creating a buzz. And every time, it's because of word of mouth advertising. Hear that? That's interesting. One friend telling another how much he likes the book and what impact it has made on him. Until the early 1990s, listen to this, this is incredible. Until the early 1990s, the best-selling book had sold 3.5 million copies. Okay, for all time, until the 1990s, the hottest-selling book was 3.5 million copies. Recently, that barrier has been broken by several titles that have sold many more than a few million copies. One title is The Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren. Listen to this. Sold just under unprecedented 30 million copies. So the largest selling book went from 3.5, then Rick Warren hit the scene with his Christian book at 30 million copies. That is huge over a period of 5 years. Unlike any nonfiction title in history, the buzz over this was unparalleled. People were talking and books were selling. But as remarkable as these numbers are, they don't come close to the annual sales of the Bible. Listen to this. Every year, year after year, more than 500 million copies of the Bible are sold. Wow. Wow. Largest book of all time, sold 3.9. Rick Warren comes, and his book is about the Bible. It's about 30 million. The Bible's been selling 500 million and growing every year. Amen. Hallelujah. That's what's called inspiration. That's how books got included into the canon of Scripture. They inspire people. It's not just a book. It changes lives. I just thought you might want to... and forget the typical book's product life cycle. 48% of its lifetime sales within the first 90 days. The Bible is in a category all its own. Here's a book that has been available for mass distribution since 1455, and its sales have actually increased from decade to decade. The inarguable fact of these numbers tell us something about the magnitude of the Bible. Wow. Is that interesting? Am I boring you? This is the only book people will die for. This is what I'm talking about, inspiration. Not only will people buy it, they will die for it. William Tyndale is a perfect example of this. Back in the 1530s, he was a student at Oxford University in England. He was studying the Bible. He used to love debating theology with his buddies. In fact, they hated him because he was so good. He would tear him up. He loved the Bible. He'd read it, he'd digest it, he became the Word. And then they hated him. The scholars that he grew up with and went to Oxford with, they began to hate him because his reason and his intellect was so piercing with using the Word of God. Okay? And then he started translating the Bible into the English language. They called it the vulgar language, in common day English. Because the Church of England at that time didn't allow the congregation to have a Bible. Because they thought they would lose their job. If everybody had a Bible, what do they need a priest for? So they were scared to death that if everybody had a Bible, they were going to lose their job. So they started persecuting William Tyndale. He had to leave. He went to London. He started working on translations. And then they persecuted him. He had to go to Germany, right? And he kept working on his Bible. He translated the whole New Testament into the modern day English. And then he started translating the Old Testament. Well, the religious leaders were stewing. They were just scared of their jobs, and they hated him. And one day they arrested him and put him in jail for 500 days. And then they tried to put him on trial. They had him recant his faith. He wouldn't do it. They wanted him to recant Jesus, and I don't know why a church would want you to recant your faith, but they wanted him to, and then he wouldn't, and so they started to burn him at the stake. That's what they did to Christians who lived out their faith back then. They put up a bunch of branches and logs. They had a stake in the middle. They tied them to the stake. And they were about to light the thing on fire, and the hangman, he strangled him till he died so that he wouldn't have to suffer. But he died. And he said, right before they killed him, he said, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." See, he was even praying for the King of England. He wasn't cursing him. It's amazing what will happen when you get the Bible inside of you. And so, wow, people die for the Bible. And I could read, you can go read the book of Fox's Book of Martyrs. It lists the martyrs throughout all history. Talk about getting the right attitude. You'll have the right attitude after you find out that teenagers died for their faith and adults died for their faith, and people all throughout history have died for what they believe in. And we don't have to sacrifice much of anything for our faith. It's amazing. So the Bible is an extraordinary book. What time is it? Okay, let's go 5 more minutes. Outside of a few spurious books in the New Testament canon, no other books were ever seriously considered for inclusion, though there are dozens of books bearing names like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Peter, and the Acts of Pilate. None of them met the criteria to be included in the New Testament. What was the criteria to be included in the New Testament? What was the first one? Raise your hand. Raise your hand.
Written by an apostle.
Written by an apostle. Had to be written at the time of the apostles, which was what time period? 30 AD, sometime after Jesus died, 33 AD, okay, right around then. Before 90 AD, okay, that time period, 30 to 90 AD. So it had to be in that time period, okay? Had to be written then, because that was one of the apostles, okay? What was another criteria?
Used among most of the groups.
Right, you had to be used in the churches, widely circulated in the then known world, all the churches. Okay, Donna? Books had to agree with each other. It would be contradictions.
Had to change lives.
Had to change lives, right. Had to have God's impromptu on it, had to be inspirational. That's what you're saying? Okay, so we're talking about non-canonical books that were rejected, didn't have some of these things. Okay. So the gospel, you see this on the History Channel all the time. Okay, you ever see that? Okay, you see it on History Channel, so you're getting the answer right here. Gospel of Thomas, Gospel of Peter. These books were written well past the apostolic age. Write that down. Well past the apostolic age. Some as late as the Middle Ages. And most of them are clearly legendary and heretical. Legendary, meaning fanciful and totally crazy, sort of like the gods of the Greeks, okay? And heretical, meaning totally contradictory to the scriptures. You know what heresy is? When something violates the clear teaching of God's word, basically. Okay, so, in fact, there are no ancient writings arguing for the acceptance of these 2nd and 3rd century books as scriptures, except by heretics such as Marcion or the Gnostics. People are arguing for them now, but we're like 2,000 years back. Okay, these books in the canon, okay, all of Paul's books, Peter, James, John, all these books were in wide circulation. They're already accepted by the people, okay? And then 250 years later, the Gospel of Thomas shows up. Says, hey, you missed me! Gospel of Thomas. It lies twice in its title. It's not a gospel, and it wasn't written by Thomas. Thomas died 250 years before. It wasn't a gospel because it didn't include the life of Jesus, the birth, the life, and the death of Jesus. That's what a gospel. So it lies twice in its title. Came along 250 years later, the Bible was already set. But we're here 2,000. Yeah, what about that book that was written in 300? Well, that was way too late. It'd be like someone right now, how long have we had our Constitution of the United States? Right, 200 years? It'd be like someone said, hey, I found a book. It's your Constitution. Didn't you know it? And it contradicts our Constitution. It says that men are not all created equal. Okay. And it just totally contradicts our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. You know? Would we accept it? Absolutely, we reject it. There's no evidence for it. It was just written. And then it says it was written by the Founding Fathers. Well, I don't think so. It's written on a computer. Okay? So, but maybe 2,000 years from now, they might look at that book and say, whoa, yeah, it was written a long time ago. Maybe it was one of their founding documents. But we're saying, no way. We've had the Constitution, we've had our founding documents for 200 years. Same type of deal. All right, any questions about that? Bring this page back next week. We'll keep going through it. Next week, we won't have church. So, can you save a piece of paper for 2 weeks? I'll make some extra copies. Any questions? Any answers? Yes, Donna? Yep. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's in our lesson too, but we can answer it now. Mike? She said, did you hear the question? She said, what do you say to people who say that the Bible is written by man, not by God? In other words, saying man is fallible, man is a sinner, so he couldn't come up with something divine. That's actually a good question. And Mike has the answer. I have the answer too. But I'd just love to hear him talk. Really. What would you say, Mike?
Well, the only answer is what's in Scripture. That, it tells us that, God spoke through men, that He moved them along, that they wrote. And the imagery there is, of a ship being moved in a certain way, rudder stuff. And there's several other scriptures that talk about it, that God inspired. Even the Old Testament, God speaking. You're going to have to use the Scripture to make the case that men were used by God, but it was still God behind them inspiring.
Yes. Did you hear that, Dawn? She didn't hear it. Can you say it all over again? No. Yes, and that's what you say. God moved upon men to write, and He used their personalities. That's in your notes. So read ahead. Oh, okay, well, she's not going to accept anything. God, who created the whole world, who can make a donkey speak English. Yeah. He can do anything He wants. Making a man write his words is nothing, right? Yes, Fred?
There are a lot of liberal so-called Bible scholars that are saying the Gospel of Thomas teaches that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene and had other children.
Yes.
And that's totally ridiculous.
Right, and that's the whole movie, the code, the Da Vinci Code is all about that. Yes, Mike?
I mean, there are secular writers that claim inspiration from a guardian angel, a dead relative, whatever. And people believe that junk and buy their book because of it.
Yeah.
If we can believe that others are inspired by those things, why can't we believe that God inspired?
Good, that's good. It's logical. We're using our brains, right? Okay, check this out. If they say the Da Vinci Code says that Jesus, the Gospel of Thomas said Jesus had a wife, had children, and that lineage made superhumans, okay? Jesus would have said he had a wife, because it wasn't wrong for rabbis to have wives. They weren't Catholic priests. This is Jesus, and this is Jesus' mother, and this is Jesus' brother, and this is Jesus' wife, Mary. They would have said that, because being married is not a sin. It wasn't back then. God created marriage. So Jesus would have said it.
Amen.
It's kind of simple. So don't believe that. That's just fairy tale stuff. The Bible would have said it. The Bible tells you the good, the bad, and the ugly about all the people. It's true, isn't it? The Bible doesn't whitewash or sugarcoat anything. It tells you the good about David. It tells you that David sinned with Bathsheba, had her husband killed. Okay? So it would have told you the good and whatever of Jesus, because he had no bad side, right? But they would have told you if he was married. It wasn't a big deal. And if he had children, they would have told you that too. The Bible didn't hide stuff. Cool. Any other questions? And this is fun. Yes?
There's a contradiction in the Gospel of Luke about when that was written, Luke and Acts. Some scholars say 200, which puts it outside the actual, and then others say it's like around 60 AD.
Yeah.
Is there anything in that book that explains that discrepancy and why? Because I've heard people point to that, well, Luke wasn't written when everything else was, it was afterwards.
I haven't heard that myself, but I would download the book and read it. What have you heard about it?
That the Gospel of Luke and Acts was written about 200 years, like about 200 AD, between 100 and 300 AD, I think, after the Apostolic Age. And that he was a historian, but he wasn't contemporary to the apostles or immediately after.
Well, actually, he was a companion of Paul. Paul talked about the beloved physician, Luke. And Luke wrote both Luke and Acts, writing Acts to his Theophilus, a lover of God. And if Luke was a companion, of Paul, he wrote Luke,